Why can it take so long to make changes either to your behaviors, your habits, or even to your own mentality? Things like anxiety, overwhelm, doubt. Why is it that it can sometimes take so long to make those changes that you want to make? Well, I'm going to share with you in this video why it sometimes takes so long, how to change even faster than you ever thought you could, and I'm also going to share with you some other tips, tricks, and techniques that you can start applying today. So let's get started. Hey, your anxiety relief guy, and if this is your first time joining me, welcome. I'm so glad to have you here. If you are a veteran viewer or listener, welcome back. I'm so glad to have you back. Now, if you're like most people, you know that you are a work in progress. I believe that we always should be working towards something so that we don't get stagnant. And many of the people I work with, they understand, like, I'm a constant work in progress, so there's always something that I can work on or that I can work with. However, when people first join my program, this happens, I would say, a good like 80-90% of the time. People usually join me on the intake session and they come in with a notebook or a folder or a steno pad and they go through it and they're like, okay, Dan, here are all the lists of everything that I want to change about myself. And I want to do it in a matter of 8 weeks. And I'm like, no pressure, challenge accepted. But can we really change all those things in 8 weeks? Sometimes we can, others, it's going to be a little bit more of a journey. And here's what I can tell you after my experience of working with tens of thousands of high-performing executives, entrepreneurs, business professionals, CEOs, leaders, innovators. Here's what I have learned and what I've discovered. When people's focus is everywhere, it goes everywhere. And it's really difficult for them to narrow in on just one thing, and then they start minimizing the things that they've changed, and the things that they've changed become obsolete, and then a new thing pops up, and it's almost like shiny object syndrome. So what I've noticed is that when we go through all of those things that a person wants to change, there's usually what I call a chain breaker. And a chain breaker is the one thing that they can change about themselves that is going to trigger what I call the domino effect. And as you know, you hit one domino and it hits the next one, the next one, the next one, and then all the other ones fall down around it. They all collapse around it. And that's what we can do when we're changing behavioral problems, habituated problems, when we're dealing with challenges in our lives, even when we make one small tweak or adjustment in one place, it can influence so many other areas of our lives. In this video today, I really want you to focus on the power of one. If you could just change one thing over the course of like 6 to 8 weeks and work on that one thing, what would it be? And usually it boils down to some sort of feeling or emotion. And it could be only if I had more confidence, or only if I was more assertive, or only if I was more decisive, or only if I had more ambition, or only if I was more charismatic. So when you focus on one thing, we can break that thing down into chunks. We call it chunking down. And what happens is we get under all of those layers. And when we get under all of those layers, it's going to help unpeel all the other layers around it. So when we go underneath what you want to achieve and accomplish, and we focus on the power of one, what's the chain breaker? What's the one thing that's going to influence other changes to happen in your life? We start there. Then what's going to happen is people start tearing out those pages of their notebook, crumpling them up and throwing them away because all the things they wrote down begin to shift. And this is a really powerful thing that happens, and it allows us to really celebrate the shifts that we're making and understand that when we focus on the power of one, and where we direct our focus, that's where our attention goes. When we're trying to focus on all these different things at one time, it's impossible to do that. And sure, many of you watching this video or listening to this, if you're listening to the podcast, you probably know this, but the reason why you haven't gotten to that level is because you haven't implemented it yet. Now, if you see me looking down here watching the video, I have some notes written down on a Post-it note so I can stay on task. I want to make sure I'm making the best use of your time. So when you understand the concept of the power of one, Make sure it's something that you want and not something that you need. Here's why. It will be a much more pleasurable journey and an easier journey if we focus on getting more of what we want instead of what we need. The reason I say this is because we can survive on bare basic needs, so we don't have to fight too hard to get our needs met. So when we focus more on what we want and not what we need, then all of a sudden we're going to fight harder to get more of what we want. This is just behavioral because we already have what we need, and many of us already have inside of us what we need to get what we want. We just have to access it differently. And how do you access it? A lot of people will usually try and take medications, or they'll try and self-medicate. Sometimes they'll try and go to therapy, they'll read books, they'll binge watch content. And again, they'll try too much stuff. They'll do too many things, and it's the power of one. Just like you want to achieve one thing, that's the chain breaker. If you try 20 different things to change that one thing, how much success do you think you're going to get? Not that much. So it's about finding the right thing to change that one thing. What one thing will change the one thing? One of the other trends I've noticed after working with tens of thousands of high-performing and ambitious individuals is that when they are more successful, or when they achieve higher levels of success, it is directly related to the quality of questions they ask themselves. Now, I've also worked with some people who were not very functioning. I've worked with people who were going through very difficult times. They didn't have much. They weren't really accomplishing or achieving much, and their baseline of function was way down, and compared to some of the high performers that I've worked with. And when I start working with those people and people who are in that category, I notice that they're asking themselves really destructive questions. And also, I notice that their focus is on everything that is wrong and everything that's negative and every reason as to why it's negative or going wrong. So where we direct our focus, that's where attention goes. And also, this is the third thing, I've noticed that internal self-talk will help us determine where we go in life and how we show up. When you put all of this together, you focus on what you want to achieve and accomplish. You focus on the one thing that can be the chain breaker, that can influence other changes to happen in your life. You focus on one thing that can help you do it. You ask yourself quality questions, and you might ask yourself, okay, what resources do I already have available to me that can help me get more of what I want? And then you focus on your internal self-talk. And instead of being destructive, instead of being critical, instead of being self-defaming, we can be supportive. Instead of criticizing ourselves, we can be compassionate with ourselves. And what this is ultimately going to do, it's going to help open up your eyes to more opportunities. And it's going to help open up your eyes to more of those one things that you can do after you accomplish the other one thing. So I absolutely love working with people through this and doing the deep inner work that they need to do and that they want to do. So this is what differentiates me versus people who are doing more conventional therapy. I take on people that really want to make the changes. And yeah, there also may be a need there as well, but it's people that really want to do that deep inner work. I used to work with a lot of teenagers, and one of the first things that would happen is resistance, right? So I'd have to get through that resistance. So I have discovered ways that bypass that resistance, but now I've shifted out over the past 5 or 6 years or so to mainly working with ambitious professionals, entrepreneurs, like I said, executive CEOs, because I know that once you've made it here, you're willing to do more work to get here. And it's going to be so much easier, and you're going to really enjoy the journey. And just like one of my high-level executives said the other day, he said, Dan, I am a work in progress. And he said, once I achieve this, I know that there's still more that I want to achieve. And if you're like that, if you have that frame of mind, it's time to do some more inner work. It's time to get to that next level. It's time to decrease the stress, the anxiety, the frustration, the doubt that sometimes creeps in. It's time to do the inner work that you want to do. And I'd love to help you out with that. So maybe the one thing you do today is set up a call with someone from my team. And all you have to do is just click the link that's below this video or in the description of the video, or you can go to dancandel.com/apply, dancandel.com/apply. And that will bring you to a calendar and then a brief application to fill out. And then we also have a call prep guide, which is just a little assignment to help you begin doing some of that inner work so you can gain some insight into what's going on with you so that we can have a really good discovery session. So with that said, my friends, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening, being with me again if you are a veteran listener, or joining me if this is your first time. As always, be well, do good, be true to who you are, happy healing, and remember, choose the one thing, the power of one. Bye for now.